Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Prupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. Gentlemen, I am thrilled to have on Matt Sweetwood, who is a best-selling author, CEO, entrepreneur, single father of 5 kids who has raised them to be outstanding, successful members of society. So there's definitely something there. And also a master of change, a master of shifting, a master of pivoting. And in this absolutely epic conversation, we talk about how do you deal with change? How do you build yourself up to be someone who is able to utilize all the aspects of your personality in leadership? And also, how do you learn from your mistakes and not be crippled by them? So this is definitely one I'd love for everyone to take notes on. Thank you so much for joining. And one of the things that I'm hoping you will see at this point is that we are extremely focused on living a better life. And one of the most important components of that is getting the direction and the one-on-one work that you need in order to live better. So I am a strong proponent of coaching. I do a lot of coaching myself, and I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, to please do what many other people have done. Reach out. Let's have a conversation. There's no obligation to you whatsoever to see if we might be a good fit to work together. And if that might not be the case, I would be thrilled to introduce you to any of the multitude of options and networks and people that I know who could provide that help. So again, please reach out via social channels, whatever it might be. I don't think I'm too hard to find, certainly not, I hope. And let me know how I could be of benefit to you. Thank you so much. That's great. I am thrilled to have on a longtime friend and one of the earliest guests on my other podcast, Mr. Matt Sweetwood, who has now beautifully reinvented himself yet again, and has, in the meantime, since we last spoke, authored a book, a best-selling book, Leader of the Pack, and has continued to be a force of inspiration for entrepreneurs, business people, single parents, and fathers. So I'm thrilled to have you back, and I'm very excited to have you meet my co-host, Mike.
Wow, what an introduction. I don't think I really want to speak after that, Rabbi, because after that, I'm just going to go downhill from there. So.
Okay, great. So,
all right, well, this will then be the shortest interview of all time.
Ever, right? That's right.
I can keep talking though, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's right.
Matt, tell us a little bit about, just kind of from an offset, what was it like? You were running a social media startup in New York.
Mm-hmm.
You've been living there. You raised your family there, and then you had to kind of reinvent yourself. You wound up, now you're in Florida, but what was some of the things that was going through, especially because so many people find themselves at crossroads throughout their life? What's it like having to do that again? What are some tips and strategies that you felt were very helpful to get you to where you are now?
I think that reinvention, and it's funny because, I'm a speaker. I speak on reinvention a lot. It enters essentially every talk that I give. And I think reinvention is that process of always looking at the situation you're in, trying to do a little bit of anticipation of what things are. But here's the key point. It's actually acting on it. This is the hardest part, is that, I can sit there in front of an audience I'm speaking to, and you sort of talk to them about where they think they are in the need to reinvention. Some people will just say, I am in the greatest spot. Everything is, not too many. Will say I'm in the greatest spot. Everything is good. I promise you, when I start to poke them, there'll be a challenge that they kind of know is coming to their business, or something is going on, in their community or whatever, and you find people along the way. So it's always that constant analysis of where you are, and not to be afraid. After all the stuff I've been through in my life, just not afraid to make changes. So even what I did even before I was in New York City, I was in New Jersey for 25 years. I ran a business. To sell a business that you built up yourself, to exit that business is scary, right? Because I remember the day I signed the paper, I woke up the next day, said, you're unemployed. Even though I built a $100 million company, it's like, okay, maybe I'll never work again. It's that moment when your girlfriend leaves you and you're like, oh, I'll be alone forever. No. So you figure out and you just keep moving and you keep moving and moving and analyzing. And then I think the real key aspect is to be willing to take action. And I've always been willing to do that. I was in New York. I look like a pretty smart guy right now because I moved out of New York 8, 9 months ago. You know, and New York is a very difficult place to be right now. I moved to Miami, you know, and found another position here. So I think really to answer your question, I answered it in a general sense, which is to analyze your situation on a constant basis. You should be constantly looking to reinvent. This is true in the business world too, and I can give you some amazing examples.
Is there a difference between reinventing yourself because of necessity and reinventing yourself because you choose to keep moving and growing? Because I think definitely, if you look at your life, there's obviously been times when you've had to reinvent yourself because of necessity. And there have been times when things are tickety-boo and just fantastic, but you've chosen to reinvent. Talk about the differences between the two.
I think that actually might be one of the best questions I think I've ever been asked about it, because that is the ultimate nuance in how you look at things. So we didn't really talk about it a lot, but I became a single dad of 5 little kids, and I was in a circumstance where I had to reinvent myself. I had to learn to be a parent, really learn to be a parent, raise these 5 little kids. I was overweight myself, really out of shape. I had to just change everything. That was necessity, okay? But I'm going to use a couple of business examples of why you need to continuously look at reinvention. And I came from the photo industry, so I have some great examples from the photo industry, because that's an industry that has undergone, massive changes. And I remember sitting in the office of the CEO's office of the Eastman Kodak Company back in the early 2000s. And they showed us, we were big customers of Kodak, and they showed us this nice steady decline of film over the next, whatever, 20 years. I mean, if you know anything about film went boom, gone. Like in 2008, that was done. Now, here's the amazing point, is that Eastman Kodak Company invented the digital sensor and invented the digital camera. But they were afraid to pivot and take away from their existing cash cow, which was film. And so they sat on it. Well, Canon, Nikon, Sony, all the rest of them, they didn't sit on it, and they ate their lunch. Kodak declared bankruptcy in 2012. They're being one of the largest corporations in the world. So that reinvention process has to be on a constant basis. So while you may want to reinvent out of necessity, because that's life goes like that, God determines these things, throws you stuff when you get too comfortable, you have to reinvent. But you also should be in the process of continually trying to reinvent yourself and trying to find where the next sweet spot is. To me, that is a fundamental of the most successful people.
So here's another question for you. I've reinvented myself many times. I've lived in multiple countries, been lucky enough to co-found and start multiple companies, etc. The challenge with that is when you get, for me, when you get confident about your ability to reinvent yourself, is that sometimes you don't stick and be resilient with that which hits speed bumps. And I always have to look in the mirror and say, are you reinventing because you just haven't got the energy or the desire to fight through this brick wall? Or is it because it's a better situation and it's something, do you ever face that challenge?
Yeah, and I have my personal slogan applies to that. And that's the question of how badly you want it. If you want something badly enough, you're going to make it. So I find that when I'm in a circumstance and I have that sort of feeling that you have, like, do I really feel like fighting this fight? I simply just ask myself the question, do I want it badly enough? And if the answer sometimes is no, it's okay. It's okay to give yourself that answer. I don't want it badly, but if I want it badly enough, nothing gets in my way and I will do anything it takes to succeed. And I think that you sort of probably did that subtly. Like, you sort of making that decision. Do I really want to fight this fight? And if the answer is yeah, you'll do it. So, and every reinvention doesn't have, ideally, every reinvention is a successful reinvention, but at least the process of reinvention can lead you to the next step. So I always think that keeping moving, particularly in today's world where essentially every marketplace, everything changes. I mean, I don't think if you don't do that, you're gonna fail. Who expected COVID? Who expected the unrest that happened now? I know some people expected the unrest, but nevertheless, when you look at the path of things, if you aren't in that mode of reinvention, you're going to be in trouble. Your business is going to be in trouble. You should be trying to reinvent your business right now. Try to anticipate where things are going to go.
Pivoting from being a person that's constantly in change to your fascination with photography, which is a static moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting comparison in the sense that I'm like a fast photographer. I think it actually moves into that space. Like, some photographers, so I ran a camera store, and one of the cool things that we did in the camera store is we ran a photography education program. I had some of the most famous photographers in the world there. All the people that worked for me were photographers. And we would go out, we would take these trips out, we would take people to all sorts of events, from sporting events to botanical gardens to abandoned prisons, and just really create excursions. And sometimes I would go, and they would have all this equipment and all of this stuff and everything that go on, and I would just take this little camera or my cell phone and go, boop, and get a great picture. And I always used to sort of comment on that if your mind is really, really focused, speed is irrelevant. You can do things really accurately, really creatively, and really well if you're really focused. And at least that's a skill that I've had, and I thank God for it every day, that I can move quickly but still be creative, which is really at the heart of your question. Not everybody can do that, I understand. I can't do a lot of things. I can't sing, I can't dance, my Hebrew sucks, all of that stuff. So.
I wanted to ask both of you, as people that have had to consistently reinvent themselves, there's a principle that Maimonides speaks about, that great things are built by stupid people, because if people understood how much effort would go into raising a family, building a business, they might never endeavor to do it. Mm-hmm. And so one of the interesting things about both of you is that you've had to do some pretty radical reinventions later, or at later stages in your career. It wasn't like you just did it once or twice, but it's like an ongoing thing. I'm curious if it gets easier because, again, you can draw from previous examples, or does it get harder in the sense that I can't believe I'm doing this again? I thought I wouldn't have had to do it at this stage. I remember Mike saying a couple of months ago, anyone that's a CEO that's not seriously concerned right now is out of their mind. So I'm curious how that works in terms of the amount of times you've done it.
I think that the answer is both. Once again, see, your questions are also deep, so they never have yes or no questions. I like yes or no, multiple choice. I think that on some aspects it's easier, and some aspects it's harder. It's harder because simply of what Mike said. It's like, oh, do I really want to go through this again? You've done it. There is a wearing effect. We're not as physically strong, or in that sense, you can wear out. On the other hand, you gain the wisdom, and this too shall pass. You'll get through it. If you just do it step by step, you get through it. So the confidence that you get, the courage that you build in doing that in previous times, gives you that sense. And it's like, am I going to fail? Well, God has put a nice shirt on me and put me in Miami up to this point. I made it 50-something years on this earth. I'm gonna keep going anyway. So I think that those kinds of philosophies and the confidence that you build, that you've done it, and even if it doesn't work, you'll do it again, I think really helps you get through it emotionally. But sometimes physically, or sometimes like to think I have to move again. I'm sitting in, I did this apartment, I'm in an apartment, decorated it nice, as you can see, and I don't know, to have to move again. Like, let's say somebody came in and offered me, this amazing position someplace else that I couldn't refuse, or even better yet, somebody came in and bought out our company, or put a lot of money into our company and said, we don't want you to be the CEO of Lux Now anymore. I'd be like, okay, take my money, and I would go move. And the thought of moving would be like, oh my God, and the thought of finding again. But we would do it. I know I would do it and get through it.
So, from my perspective, very similar to, all of your comments, right? But I guess what I'll add to that is to definitely, having been around long enough and having built some resources, whether it's financial or a network or wisdom, or in my case, a spouse who's very happy to tell me straight up what my strengths and weaknesses are, which is very important, because as you sort of build your bridge of accomplishment, people are more reticent to tell you what the real reality about you is. You get more covered than you really deserve. But so that obviously all of those things, having network, resources, etc., wisdom, make things easier. But here's the other side of the conversation. The older you get, the more you've achieved, the more you're concerned about losing what you have. And at least in my case. And it's funny because when I was younger, there was nothing to lose as long as my wife backed me. And my dad and my mom were always a safety net in whatever, even if it was just to cry on. You went out there, you didn't have much to lose and you only had to gain. Later on in life, you start reflecting on what you have to lose. And that's something that you do have to deal with. At some stage, you have to say, you have to truly assess your priorities of success and accomplishment. What are they? Are they what they used to be? Are they the material, easy counting type successes? If I push through that wall for this purpose, what do I gain and what do I lose? You have to, when we're younger, I don't know if you agree, Matt, it was only what we have to gain. We didn't worry. What we had to lose, we could reinvent, we could recreate, we could shave and we look better in the morning. But later on in life, you have to ask yourself the question is, what do I give up in order to go forward in this new venture? And that's a hard conversation.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And that also just doesn't apply to money, it applies to time.
Yeah.
You know, I had to think very hard about moving to Miami. Here's the loss. The loss is I have 3 of my adult kids live in New Jersey and New York. I used to go to dinner with them, go out with them, see them frequently, you know, weekly. And I had to actually make the decision to give that up. When I sold my company, my son was working with me in the company. And when I sold the company, it put him in a very difficult position. I did that though for another reason. He needed a kick in the butt and needed to go out and finish some things on his own before he worked for dad, but that sort of secondary thing. So with every decision you make, of course, there's things, you know, you can lose or things you can give up. And certainly I'm aware of that. You know, look, I came here and not only am I the CEO of this company, I invested in this company. And there's certainly not a sure thing that we're going to make it. I believe we will. I believe we have an amazing business model. I have an amazing team and tech and all sorts of stuff. We raise a little bit of money and we're going to get over the hump. But look, everything's a risk, right? I could lose my investment. I can have come down here and, you know, been away from my children and you know, and not succeed. It can happen, of course.
You actually teed up something that I wanted to ask, certainly Matt and also Mike potentially, was when you mentioned that you had to sell the company to give your son kind of a kick in the butt. I think a lot of times there's a pressure on parents to provide opportunity for the kids. On the flip side, sometimes if you grow up in a household where the father, the mother, the family has been successful, so then it's also difficult because they don't have that same, you know, hunger that you might have had because you had to make it. So how do you walk that balance between giving them the opportunity but not breaking them with it?
I don't even know how to answer that because I'm not sure I did it very well. I don't know. The only thing I can answer is the result is that all my kids are very, very hardworking. And I think that they're hardworking just simply because they saw me work my butt off trying to care for them and run a business. I'm sort of an unrelenting kind of worker, high energy kind of person. And on the other hand, sometimes I think I was too easy. I think in my case, you know, the mother left, particularly when they were very little, and you kind of feel sorry for them and you don't really know how to handle the circumstance. And maybe I was too easy on them and maybe it was too much opportunity. On the other hand, they went to one of the best high schools in the country. I helped them through their colleges. They all went to the best colleges. They didn't have to pay for their colleges. So I don't really know how to answer that question. Maybe I could have been better by being tougher, you know, pay for your own college or whatever, you know, make my son not allow him to come work. Though I did that for a while. I made him work and suffer out in the real world and then came and he matured and so on. But I wanted to give him a kick, you know, so I didn't want him to think that the business was just his right and he didn't have to excel in his life. But so, I mean, I think that I don't know if I'm an authority to answer that because I don't know that I've done it in the best possible way. I'm just thank God that my kids are okay. That's it.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, Rabbi Rapp and I have spoken about this as well. I have 4 sons. And a very wise person gave me some good advice, which I don't always listen quickly to good advice. In this case, I did. And that is that ultimately you can put as many rules in the house, you can say as many things. Two things are going to affect the way your kids grow up. One is what they see you do, you and your spouse. In my case, what they see you do consistently and passionately. And two is the kind of people you admire and you're allowed to be around your family a lot. And that's always been a priority for me. And the rest, you just got to pray. You just got to
Right.
adapt.
I always say like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 is the effort and the things that you do. Okay. 1/3 is just the people and the environment that they're in. And the other third is God, luck, whatever you want to call it. That's it. Maybe there's a genetic component in there, I guess.
Well, genetic components somehow will relate or be intertwined with the first third.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Meaning that you only have about a third control. I probably could make that argument in fifths, meaning that you probably only have 20% control over what the heck happens, but okay.
Yeah, you know what? I think that it's maybe even more than a third, depending on the kind of parent you are. You're obviously an interactive parent. You spoke about regular meetings with your kids, you know, and I think ultimately you get judged when you, at 120, when you go upstairs, you get judged not on your balance sheet, you get judged on the quality of your descendants and those beautiful touches you left behind. And you seem to get that.
Yeah, I hope. I'm a little bit afraid of that meeting, but okay.
Although Rabbi Rapp has reminded me that no one knows about Moshe's descendants, so maybe I'm completely wrong, right?
So Matt, I'm really curious, what prompted you when you wrote Leader of the Pack, your book that deals with fatherhood, in a lot, what do you feel like as a single father you offer as the most important advice for people that might be single parents, might have, you know, two parents in the house? What do you feel like people reading your book need to pick up and to best utilize with their children?
Yeah, and I try to answer this without being meme-ish, you know, and give you sort of the one-liners that we create, you know, in our marketing platform. I think that my book shows that you can be really stupid and do stupid things and make mistakes in your lives and repeat those mistakes over and over again. But if you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying to do the right thing and you trust in God and you try to make you just keep going, and you know failure is only when you stop and you just keep going, eventually you'll turn the tides in your favor. And I think that's really what my book is about. It's about, you know, being in a situation which ultimately was my responsibility. You know, I chose to marry this woman, I chose to have children with her, I chose to go into the crazy photographic industry, I chose to do all of these things. So, you know, I'm not blaming anybody. It's my choices that I did. But, you know, I still was, you know, a little bit of, you know, unfortunate luck, or, you know, it's very hard to find a woman you'll marry and then who will leave your 5 children. I mean, you have to work really hard to find that person, because that's not usually the case. I consider myself a very special man to be able to find such a woman. But in any event, it's really just a story of how I just keep making mistakes, eventually say, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again, and then slowly learn my way and pull my way out. And the lesson to anybody is that no matter what goes wrong in your life, no matter how low you get, there's always a way. If you keep trying and keep trying to do the right thing, you're going to end up into the promised land. It's as simple as that. And if you read, I have 135-star reviews on the book. It was a #1 bestseller. And you read the reviews on the book. This is the most rewarding part, because you know, you write a book, you don't make money, not unless you're like Bill O'Reilly or Hillary Clinton or something like that. You read the reviews. It's changed my life. I view relationships differently. I know that I can overcome whatever it is I'm going. If you've made it through that, you know, my book reads a little bit like an action novel. It's it's supposed to be a memoir or a self-help book or something like that, but it actually reads like an action novel. And I think that if you can get through that, if you read that and you feel like, you know, hey, he did that, he made all those stupid maneuvers, he's successful, I can. So that's really the message. in the book. It's a really uplifting book, but it really directs people on how to overcome really tough problems.
What did you find was, well, I guess I'd like to sort of bounce it to both of you, is how do you, you mentioned there's so many dark nights of the soul, so to speak, and and that a lot of people want to move away from fear, and they want to move away from uncertainty and to create all these kinds of things. How do you leverage fear? How do you leverage challenges and difficulties, and to do it in an effective way instead of getting paralyzed?
I think the way I would answer that is we all have fears. And, you know, when you're faced with things that you've never seen before or didn't anticipate, you know, you have a choice to make. Your choice is, you have basically three choices: do nothing, run away, or face them. I think that's really basically the case in every time you have a fearful situation. And in my case, I had 5 little kids. I used to have like blonde hair. They all had blonde hair. They all kind of looked like me. They looked up at me and they're like, "Dad, what's next?" Now, it's very hard. I love my kids. I'm not going to run away from them. You know, I had a business, 100 people looking at me saying, you know, "What's next? The business is screwed, and sorry for that, but the business is messed up. What's next?" So I thought about becoming a surfer in Hawaii with no, you know, off the grid. But I sunburn too easily, so that's probably not a good choice. And I said, okay, I'm going to stick it out. And now I'm going to start to do some things that I am just mortified of doing. And the thing about courage is that courage builds little by little. You don't just turn out to be, you know, Navy SEAL, you know, Navy SEAL Team 6 because you wake up one day. There's a heavy training, you know, that goes on to build your courage and your strength and all of those things. And life works exactly the same way. So I had kids running around that wouldn't brush their teeth. I had no idea how to get this right. So, you know, eventually I figured out how to get them all to brush their teeth. Well, after you get your kids to brush your teeth, you kind of like, wow, I am an amazing parent. I got my kids to brush their teeth. I didn't think I'd ever be able to do that. Obviously, I'm using it as a metaphor, but that's really what it's about. And then you move to the next step. You know, they don't put their shoes away. I'm gonna buy a shoe rack. I'm gonna put it in the house, and they're putting their shoes in there, and I'm gonna bend my will to make sure they put their shoes in there. You know, and I can turn to work. I'm sitting there and saying, you know, all the small stores we're selling, they're all going out of business. Well, I can sit here and just let it happen, or I better figure out somebody else we can sell. So you just try to go at it, and you go at it. So courage to me is just something every single human being has the ability to be a courageous person. And you build courage like a muscle. You just do one little act at a time, one a day. And eventually your fear of the only thing I fear is God right now. Maybe not just God. That's it.
That's the thing about Corona. My advice to myself and to others is one day at a time. Eat the elephant one bite at a time. Otherwise, you're just going to choke. Let's talk about the God side, because I know you were very involved in the Aish Learning Center. And you talk about courage, you talk about belief, you talk about fear and all those things. To what extent does you learned through Aish, you speak about God every once in a while. To what extent do you look up and say, it's great, I've got my God on my side and my knowledge, what the value of that can be? Tell us about how God integrates into your life.
I mean, for me, I grew up, my parents, you know, were first generation here. Their first language was Yiddish. We grew up in a household where they said, you're an American, you're a Jew, shut up, just go make some money. That's it. You know, they were the wicked ones from the Passover story or something like that, I think. Anyway, so I grew up sort of detached from this. And it wasn't by choice. Just as stuff happened in my life, and I have just this amazing talk I've given actually to a few temples around about how spirituality and God came into my life. It just happened, just coincidence after like the 90-second coincidence of just these serendipitous things happening, you come to the realization that maybe God is either giving you a message or directing you or watching over you or all three simultaneously. And, without going into sort of this crazy set of coincidences, how I ended up as chairman of the board of New Jersey's, one of New York City's like largest learning organization from where I came from, is this crazy set of coincidences. And, I realized that as I went through the darkest times in my life, that those things were there just to teach me. They were there to grow me as a man. Ending up a single father of 5 kids, ages 18 months through 8 years old, is not something that people plan for. But it turned out that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was sleepwalking through life as a little boy man. Okay, well, that happens to you. You're no longer a boy man. You learn to become a man. You learn to appreciate your kids. I have a super relationship with my children that a lot of fathers probably don't have. And, it just changed my life. It changed my perspective on everything. So I've always felt, as I went through these dark times, really, I came to realize that God was really watching over me and he was teaching me. Now, I'm a very, very stubborn person. So God can't just sort of give me gentle, pushes into better places. He needs to use the Jersey style, which is a baseball bat. So when he wants me to do something, I just whack, with the bat, and then I figure out he's with me. But it's just, for me, it's just become part of my life. And being part of Asian, in New York was a great experience. For me, being there was very good because I got to help them out, use my business skills to help the organization a little bit. To me, that's kind of one of the most fun parts of being there, of combining God and business skills together. It's like, a win-win.
So you talked about hitting you with a bat, the Jersey style, the going through walls and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the hard charging side of you. I've no doubt there's also the sweet, gentle side. Tell us a little bit about that guy.
I'm not admitting to that. Of course there is. And I'm going to say this from a business side. I go on shows like this, not like this. This is the best show ever. But I go on, these interviews a lot, and they always ask me, what's your strength? You get these formulaic questions. They always say, what's your weakest? What do you wish you can improve in your business life? And I always say I'm too kind.
1 second, just so that you know, Rabbi Rapp and I never choreograph any show.
Yeah, right.
Discuss what we're going to do. I
think that's clear. I think that is. Yeah, I don't do it either. Whenever I do my own stuff, I wing it. I wing it too. And I always say that my single biggest business weakness is I'm just too kind to people. I have a very, very hard time being hard on staff, hard on people, maybe even hard on my kids. And for me, I think that learning the balance in my life between pleasing people and, being a little tougher on people has always been the hardest thing for me to deal with. So I'm a giver, not a taker. I don't know how to take gifts. I don't know how to do that. I'm always giving gifts and always doing that kind of thing. And I think sometimes it's actually a negative in some respects because, and this is a lesson that's been really hard for me to learn in life, is that people need to love and appreciate you for who you are. I sound like a meme now, but instead of really trying to please them. So I think for me, that's kind of my side. I love my kids. There's nothing I wouldn't do for them. When they want something, I just basically can't say no. And, I'm sure I'm sure you both know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I think for me, that's really it. That's my sweet side, comes in my interaction with people and, really trying to give people. I have a motto in life, actually. I try to walk through life so that every single person that interacts with me walks away better. It's sort of a philosophy that I like to live by. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the guy pumping gas at the gas station, or it's the waiter at the thing, or it's the CEO of whatever, or it's one of you dudes here on the podcast. I hope that you'll leave me in a little better place or a little better mood than, before. A little bit. I mean, you guys are very elevated souls, so it's a little bit hard for me to improve that, but, I'll try anyway.
My late mom, who was a remarkable human person, just carried the world on her shoulders. She always used to say to me, 95% of the world want to do the right thing by you. Just give them a sweet reason to allow them to feel and remember that. And that was whatever she did. There was a smile for anyone and everyone. So the best could come out of them, not for selfish reasons, not because she got more out of them. Obviously, there was a retained benefit, but so they could feel good about themselves. Because if you sweet to that person, whether it's the checkout counter person, whatever it is, for sure, the next 5 people that they're going to interact with after your interaction, they're going to be nicer too. And who knows if that 5 will be nice to the next 5. And who knows how many will take that home and be nice to the family. And if you live and think that way, the world just gets a little bit sweeter place. And right now, we all know a little bit of a sweeter place would be very, very nice.
Yeah, it would be very nice. And the flip side of that, something that I learned along the way, is that if you're suffering from something, you're feeling depressed, let's say, I'll just use some very simple thing. If you help another person who's depressed, it's going to help you a lot. And I think that's a really sort of like a advanced level of what we're both talking about here. If you're struggling in some way, if you just go out and help other people who are struggling the same way, things get better for you. So if you're in a bad mood and you go out and you help someone else be in a better mood, it's going to help your mood too.
And that's one of the things that we've been learning a lot about tzedakah, so we understand it properly. I've been reading personally, and there's no doubt about it. My wife reminds me of this. It's so much sweeter to be the giver than the recipient.
Of course.
And if you can just live your life that way, it's a cool thing.
Yeah,
I wanted to drill in just to ask explicitly, because it was interesting. I was speaking to a client of mine, and he articulated something that I never really thought of. He said something along the lines of, I haven't found that emotions help me at all. He's a very successful guy, and he just shut down all emotions. It's all numbers, it's all business, everything like that. And so I found myself, really trying to articulate how emotions create a spectrum in your life and actually give you a lot of variety. And for someone that, again, is just really into the numbers, he's very successful, but he sees it as a weakness. So I'm curious, how you in your life, both of you, please, how have you cultivated your emotional and your warmth in order to help you in your mission, even in business?
I wouldn't call it emotional warmth. I would call it emotional intelligence. There's a difference. One of the things, having been in difficult personal relationships and having to raise children, I like to think that I have a very, very high emotional intelligence. In other words, I can read people. And the ability to read people is an incredibly powerful skill set. I know both of you gentlemen, have possessed that. I can actually read you and know that you possess it. Meaning that when you interact with someone, you have a sense to whether they're honest or not. Not that it's perfect. It's not like a science test. You can sense whether they're smart. You can sense a lot of things about people. And that emotional intelligence is a weapon. It is. I think some of the most skillful politicians possess superpower skills when it comes to that, where they're able to they know how. It gives you an ability to manipulate, of course. And though I work very hard not to do that, I just use it to, when you hire somebody, you can really read whether they're the right person or whether you want to be friends with somebody. We just had a little incident here, actually, me and a friend of mine, where we didn't get treated right by somebody. And I told her, I said, I warned you in the very beginning. I said, he's not a straight guy and she's not a very nice person, kind of thing. And sure enough, it played itself out in the end. And that's just from that intuitive sense. So I think emotional IQ in business, that kind of thing, emotional intelligence is it's a super skill. And any person, I think that if you walk around the top people, from Jeff Bezos to the Tesla guy, to anybody you can think of, to Donald Trump, to whatever, Barack Obama, they all were super high emotional intelligence, could read people, and that was
I think the king of all was Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
People that have interacted. But it's interesting, Rabbi, that you asked that question, because people very misunderstand when you're gentle and peaceful to somebody, that's an opportunity for them to take advantage. And I think that you probably find Matt and I subscribe to a very similar philosophy. The only way to ever make peace is when your baseball bat is ready to be cocked and hit.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that probably fine with the two of us is that anyone who misunderstands our gentleness might get a big fright.
That's right. I think that that's accurate. And I wasn't always like that. I was always a little bit afraid that people wouldn't like me if I was too hard on them. But I didn't lose my hair for a reason. And as soon as the hair was gone, I realized that, don't confuse me because I'm nice and sweet and generous and all of those things. You cross the line, goodbye. That's it. I wrote an article actually on the reasons why you should end relationships. It actually is, it's one of these listicles, 10 reasons why. It's a really harsh article. I look like a real jerk for writing it, but it's actually really deep. And if you follow those principles, you'll have a successful life, because you can't have these kinds of people around you and hope to be successful. The article actually went viral. It's got like 27,000 shares on it or something like this. Whatever.
I love it. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. The final question, if I could be so bold, Mike, if that with your permission, is we like to ask all of our guests, what does it mean to be a Jewish executive? What's unique, I guess you can say, about the fact that, again, there are, thank God, lots of people that have been able to reach the role of executive. What does it mean? Like, what's the unique component of Judaism when it comes to success and being an executive?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I think that you have a standard that's higher, and at least I take that on myself. First of all, there's been a gazillion successful executives. So there's some sort of expectation that because you're Jewish, you're going to be somehow better in some way. It's kind of like my kids face that. My oldest daughter was like a superstar, and everybody had to kind of follow that, and they all ended up being pretty good at it. But it's sort of that thing. And I think the other thing too is that I feel in some respects, like right now, I'm in a business that is non-Jewish at all. We are in a marketplace, a tech business. We're like Airbnb for luxury. We do luxury homes, yachts and boats, yachts and cars, sorry. And there's not very many, Jewish people in the business. So I feel like I'm the standard bearer. I try to make sure that everything I do is straight. Everything even has the appearance of being honest. And I feel like I'm a little bit of the moral stewardship for our company, as I've forced other executives in the company to make sure that we're doing things really straight, because I won't allow anything the other way. So I feel like there's a little bit of role modeling that goes on, and a little bit of you have to make sure that you engage in proper activity and be prideful of it. And I don't shy away from it, even though I'm in an industry that may have some issues with it. No problem. I'm straight out and talk about it. But I think, setting a high moral standard is really important. And I feel some pressure to do that, to make sure that everything we do is completely straight. I don't want to be in that stereotype that gets put out there and be an excuse for people to say another anti-Semitic or another, trope about a Jewish business executive.
It sounds like Matt's got that deep awareness that as a Jewish executive, if you mess up, you won't be called Matt is a bad guy. You'll be called there goes that Jew. And having a sense of that history puts a fantastic, some people see it as an obligation or liability. I think you see it, like many of us, I hope, see it as an incredible opportunity. Because if you do well, they say, there goes that Jewish executive.
That's right. You got it.
Beautiful opportunity.
Gentlemen, I appreciate so much you taking the time. Thank you so much.
The pleasure's been mine. Amazing interview. Going to share this everywhere.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.